Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first session of our guest lecture series in Adjunct Professor Program. Actually, for Principle of Urban Design and Visual Environment course, yes, the student will be right here for give get some material from Professor Duanfang Lu. Yes, Professor Duanfang Lu is from University of Sydney. She's have an academic journey that's truly global. Professor Duanfang Lu is from Tsinghua University graduate and from PhD from UC Berkeley, and he served as visiting scholar at Harvard. Her research offered a look into radical shift in urbanization, from the documentation new fields in China to the socio-economic impacts of modern infrastructure. And today, Professor will guide us through a critical topic, ethical reasoning in urban design. And today's session flow, Professor Lu will present the material for approximately 1 hour. And we will then move into a Q&A session with student and participant. Student may ask questions directly by using the raise hand, and or maybe you can typing in comment box or the chat box anytime. So, Professor Lu, the floor is yours.
Thank you for your introduction, and thank you for your invitation, Jenny. Yeah, so I'd like to share screen now. So can you see my screen?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Professor. Okay.
That's great. Yes. So I understand this is a urban design unit, and you have already learned most basic principles of urban design. In today's lecture, I would like to focus on ethical reasoning in urban design, which I think is a relatively new topic. So
It's okay.
Yeah. So you can hear me okay, right? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
Professor. Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you. It's okay. It's okay. Fine.
That's great. Thank you.
That's great.
Yes. So why we talk about ethical reasoning in urban design? My first response to the question is urban design is never neutral, because every urban design affects a lot of aspects, including who can live in the city, who have access to opportunity, who experience pollution, or who experience better air conditioning, or who is displaced, and whose culture is preserved or demolished. So all these different aspects involve very careful political negotiations.
Can leave.
Yes. So okay. Basically, as urban designers, we need to move beyond purely, efficiency or urban aesthetics, and think about questions of justice and human well-being in a city. So urban design is never purely a design question. It's also a political question, economic question. And also urban design shapes not just physical space, but also the ways we interact with each other, mobility in the city, environmental exposure. For example, if you put a freeway near, a neighborhood, then, the air pollution, accessibility of the neighborhood might be radically changed. And also cultural identity might also be changed. So because, urban design is such a complicated social process, so we need to think about ethical reasoning as an important dimension in the process of urban design. So, what is ethical reasoning? I'm not sure if you have ever think about this question before, but let's start with the term reasoning before we focus on ethical reasoning. So, reasoning basically, we use reasoning in our everyday life on daily basis. So when you go travel, for example, you need to know take which bus, or if it's better to take taxi to go to a place. So that involves rational reasoning. So basically, the action of thinking about something following certain types of rationality, we call that reasoning. So here I like to cite Max Weber's 4 types of rationality as a base for our discussion. So you all know Weber is a very famous sociologist, and he has divided different types of rationality into like 4 categories: practical, theoretical, substantive, formal. So basically, practical rationality, just like what I just said, we use this particular type of rationality on daily basis. So it's a practical means and rational way of life. You accept the given reality and you calculate the most efficient means to reach certain aim. So we call that practical rationality, which is, also a kind of reasoning we use in our design, how to make the master plan reasonable for circulation of humans, goods. Theoretical rationality is slightly different. So basically, so in our social life, we use theoretical rationality frequently because any society, it's not purely organized around practical rationalities. So think about, different like society have different ideology, right? So some countries might be centered around particular religion. So you use religion as your theoretical framework, and particular view of the universe might, determine how you organize the society. So, for example, before you are able to build pyramid, you need to have the theoretical framework in terms of where people go after they die. So only after the idea of the soul arose, you might have the framework to work with to design the pyramid. So you might want to provide the dead with amenities in their graves because you believe the existence of soul. So that's theoretical rationality. So in our urban design discipline, we have certain frameworks. For example, the 10-minute city, you consider, if you organize everyday amenities within the work distance of 10 minutes work around, 800 meters. That's the ideal form you should achieve. So that's theoretical rationality. And also substantive rationality is the third type of rationality according to Weber. So basically, you have different values in this case. So, for example, capitalist society have very different ways of organizing the city in comparison to socialist societies. So, certain things considered rational under capitalist society might be considered irrational in socialist society, or another like social welfare society. So different variables determine how you make decisions. So we call that substantive rationality. And also we have formal rationality. Basically, once you determine certain things, you should definitely follow, and you make them into formal rules, laws, or fixed procedures, and then the other people will just follow the rule. So basically, we call that formal rationality. So, for example, in urban design, you have to follow the local planning laws, regulations. When we look at the street, for example, you can see different signs give you indication in terms of, how you might use this particular part of urban space in particular way. So as we can see on the street, you have to drive under 10 miles during the school time, and you have to give way to pedestrians when you cross this particular pedestrian crossway. So that's all indicate formal rationality. It's quite important in designing urban space. So, and then we talk about ethics. Anyone can tell me what is ethics? Have you ever think about ethics in urban design? So, what is the difference between ethics and, for example, aesthetics or like laws? So we talked about laws earlier. So what is ethics? Okay, I will move on to explain this. So basically, unlike economics, ethics doesn't care, about, whether this makes profits or not. So unlike, aesthetics, ethics doesn't care about whether, a certain street furniture is beautiful or not. So ethics talk about what is right or wrong and what is good or bad. So that's, the focus of today's lecture. So what means, ethics in urban design? So as I discussed a bit earlier, so ethics is different from law because ethics cares about what is right, and law cares about what is legal, and profit cares about what is profitable, and aesthetics talk about what looks attractive. So ethics is very different from the other aspects, and I assume that you have already learned the other aspect in previous weeks. So today we focus on what is right in urban design. So in when we put ethical reasoning together, basically, it's the process of evaluating actions and decisions according to moral principles instead of technical, legal, or economic or architectural outcomes. So it's about how wisely to make very difficult decisions involving ethical considerations, where the answers might be quite, difficult to solve because to seek because sometimes decisions about right or good might be relate to specific contexts or stakeholders. So ethical reasoning is a very important process in a lot of social processes. So in urban design, I think it's actually quite essential in comparison to some other fields, for example, in arts, because decisions in urban design will affect a lot of people's quality of life. So urban designers need to make ethical choices on daily basis. So you need to consider, for example, where should infrastructure be built, who receive public investment, and should informal settlement be removed or upgraded? And these questions all involve the process of ethical reasoning. And you might wish to following, a few procedures to make the ethical reasoning process easier. So you might want to identify stakeholders. For example, when you decided to improve a street, the business on the street, the shop owners could be very important stakeholders, apart from, council planners, apart from the investors of the area. And you might also recognize the conflict of interest, between different stakeholders. Residents might have different interests in comparison to shop owners, for example, and you might want to evaluate consequences for each party involved, and you might want to balance competing values and justify decisions transparently so people can communicate and negotiate and reach certain shared agreement. So in urban design, we have a few key ethical frameworks. So the first one is utilitarian ethics. So in this particular framework, the core idea is the best action produces the greatest good for the greatest number. So obviously you can't satisfy everyone, but you will try to make the best decision that can serve the greater number of community members. So under this framework, you might want to be practical for larger scale planning. But sometimes when you consider the majority of the neighborhood or the community, the minority group might suffer. And, if you follow the common view in terms of efficiency, sometimes the displacement might be the most efficient way to approach the redevelopment, but it might not be good for existing residents who do not wish to move away. And in terms of urban design, in a lot of processes such as transport design, density planning, cost-benefit analysis, infrastructure planning, you like to consider this particular framework as a important frame to work with. For example, in Jakarta, you might want to, design the flood infrastructure, and then, the question might rise by part of the community as, for example, does broader urban benefit justify displacement if you have to move some families away from the area? And for example, when you're planning a highway project, you also need to consider how the local low-income neighborhood might be affected by giving space away for the highway project. And the second key ethical framework in urban design is the rights-based ethics. So unlike the first framework, this framework cares about whether people possess rights that should not be violated. So, for example, rights to housing, right to mobility, right to public space, right to safety, right to participation. And you might want to achieve universal accessibility, like for disabled people, that will help them to have rights to urban space. You might want to adopt anti-displacement policies that will help, lower social economic class to have right to stay in their current space. And inclusive public space also involve, the recognition of rights of different social groups. For example, the older people, children. And the third framework is justice and equity. A just society protects the least advantaged. So basically, we talk about disabled people, and we also talk about the poor. So you might wish to make sure your spatial planning will achieve distributive justice, procedural justice, spatial justice, and environmental justice. So all this should be included as part of your consideration. So this means like you might wish to ask questions such as who has access to parks, which communities face pollution exposure when you put a new highway over there, and which suburbs receive infrastructure investment more than other suburbs when you, for example, you put a high-speed railway in the city, then you like to balance the benefits for different communities, and who participants in planning decisions also matters a lot in the planning process. So the fourth framework is care ethics, which is also very important in urban design. So this means cities should support children, older people, caregivers, disabled persons. And it's very important to make city walkable so people without cars or motorcycles can easily work around to get their daily affair done. And public spaces should be safe, so children and women can easily go to those spaces. So basically, we like to make sure the decisions made will provide better care for different groups. So, for example, the city is experienced by people in different ways. Like women, for example, often experience cities differently because of, harassment, safety concerns, transport insecurity, caregiving responsibilities, which limit their accessibility or scope of everyday activities. So, as urban designer, we would like to think about how to design urban spaces in ways that can make people's movement in the city safe and easy. So, and also, caregiving infrastructure could be very important for working women. So, some societies might provide daycares near workplace that could help working women. So they can send their babies to the daycare facilities on their way to work. And workability is also quite helpful because, for older people, they might not be able to drive. So if the city is more walkable, then um, it would be it would create very caring environment for older people. And child-friendly space is also quite important. It can save a lot of time for parents because nowadays, like in both developing and developed societies, many parents need to spend time to send their kids to school, to sports facilities because they worry, it's not safe for their children to walk on the streets or take public transport alone. So that actually create a lot of burdens on parents, especially women, because usually women uh, are assumed to be the full-time driver at home to send the kids to different activities. And the fifth ethical framework for urban design is environmental ethics. So basically, the core idea here is nature possesses quite important value independent of human use. So this means in urban design, we like to have biodiversity considerations, would like to have water sensitive design, carbon reduction, for example, the encouragement of green transportation, as I show in the pyramid here, consider working as, the most essential activity that should be encouraged by the green transport system. And wetland, for example, would be another important dimension to consider. How can we preserve wetlands so we don't, distort the way how nature works in our cities? So to summarize what I just said, here is a list of, the 5 different frameworks. So, and they ask slightly different questions. So Utilitarianism ask what benefits the greatest number of the community. And rights-based ethics ask, are rights protected? And justice and equity ask, are outcomes fair? And care ethics asks, does the city support human well-being and relationships? Environmental ethics asks, does urbanization respect ecological systems? So there are a range of ethical issues under these frameworks. So, for example, housing and displacement. So when you redevelop an urban neighborhood, you always have this tension between redevelopment and community stability, density versus affordability, investment versus social inclusion. So these are very difficult questions when you are doing the real life projects. So in urban renewal, because when you invest capital into a neighborhood, you would naturally increase the rents and displace long-term residents and intensify inequality. So it's always very difficult ethical questions arising in these processes. And certainly there have been a lot of discussions on gentrification as a society or as a city. The communities need to come together to prioritize certain objectives and see which decisions will create greatest benefit for the greatest number of members. So informal settlements are a common phenomenon in developing countries. So they are also always represented negatively, but certainly, for residents in informal settlements, they provide affordable housing, social networks, economic opportunity, and adaptivity. So the ethical dynamic is clear here. So should government remove informal settlement, formalize them, or upgrade them? So of course, depending on resources available, different city officials, planners might reach different decision in the process, but it would be good if we can get residents involved in the decision making, make sure different social groups would not be marginalized in the process. So another related question or ethical issue in urban design is public space and exclusion. So public space is often presented as democratic, but many spaces are actually not that accessible. So we like to offer quite a few examples here. So for example, seating. Seating appear to be, a very simple, phenomenon or, prevailing in the city, but it's a fundamental urban right. So historically, benches and places to sit were essential components of urban public space because sitting allows people to rest when they feel tired, and strangers can interact with each other when you have public seating available, and children and caregivers can interact with each other, exchange ideas, and play with each other. And citizens might, need to have, proper seating because that's, you know, a, 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 a dimension of right to the city. When you go to visit some places, when you feel tired, you need to have a place to sit. So there are good and bad examples in the area of seating. So for example, this is a redevelopment, a very successful placemaking example in New York. Maybe you have encountered this example before. So basically, earlier in this area, near the Rockefeller Center, you don't have seating, so people just don't have a nice outdoor space to have lunch or just take a rest. So after you put very simple public seating furniture there, people just, remake the place as, a pleasant place to gather, to interact with other people. So as said, even though seating itself, might be a very simple urban design gesture, urban design strategy, but the effects can be enormous. So you can totally, remake a place into a much better place after integrate seating in the landscape design. But in many cities, you actually don't have proper seating. So on the left is the photo I took in Guangzhou when I visit the Pearl River New Town, basically in the CBD area of Guangzhou. So in order to prevent people to stay in the area, they actually don't provide any proper seating. So the visitors have to sit on the ground, which is not, sometimes it might be difficult for other people to sit that way because it's difficult for them to get up. And then on the right is an image of Camden Bench in London. So it's designed by famous architect. Purposely use the strategy of deconstructing a normal bench. So you see there's no smooth surface on the top. This way they prevent the homeless people to lie on the top of the bench. So this is very unfriendly design. So as we can see, seating is not merely functional infrastructure. It's also a spatial expression of hospitality, inclusion, and civic recognition. A city with generous public seating communicate you are around to, rest anywhere. And, if you don't have that, then it's just not, showing the city is welcoming. So on the other extreme, we have hostile architecture, which purposefully make the environment unfriendly. So you will prevent the homeless people to stay. For example, on the left, you want to prevent people to use the covered outdoor space as temporary habitat. And then on the right, the normal bench by divide with the handlebars, you actually prevent people to lie comfortably on the bench. So these are not very ethical, but certainly, it's out of the motivation of some city planners view in terms of reducing the crime rate. So another ethical issue in urban design is climate ethics and urban resilience. So because climate change creates uneven urban vulnerabilities, and you have heat inequality, you have flood zones, you might also have different intergenerational justice issues in terms of, what we do might affect, what might happen in, 2 decades or 3 decades, for example. So these should be considered carefully in urban design process. And certainly water sensitive urban design is very important under this particular issue. So if we design the city to be more water sensitive, then you can not only prevent flooding, you can also preserve water for, useful purposes, and you can design the landscape accordingly so the local ecological system can benefit most from the design. So this will, involve how to integrate water cycle management into the urban design. And you might also consider existing topography, or with some modifications, you can use wetline to release storm flows over a period of, about 3 days. So that way you around, both prevent the flooding, or you can also make sure the pollutant to be resolved in proper ways. Cultural heritage and identity is another way to consider when you're making ethical decisions. So here I'm using an example from Sydney, very interesting design that, around the old water conservation facility to be used as, a semi-underground park. So that way you both, preserve the local heritage. You also, further develop the local cultural identity by preserving certain, elements to be integrated in contemporary life. So in other communities, you might also wish to preserve the migrant landscapes, not just the mainstream heritage items. That way you can, use the preservation decision making to promote cultural diversity in the community. So another ethical issue in urban design is smart cities and surveillance. So especially today, we have AI, we have, big data to be used as, the base for urban design decision making. But a lot of times, because people have unequal digital access. So for example, in social media, there might be a lot of discussion on certain topics, but those discussions might be from a particular social group, which have better access to internet. So there might be some other voices existing, but not, because they don't have good access to internet, they might not be, that loud in social media. And as a planner, you want to avoid, the pitfalls in terms of only taking social media discourse into account when you're making an important decision. And it's very important to keep in mind technology smart doesn't mean you can design a city to be more just. You like to use the technology to avoid certain biases generated in your data collection process. Okay, so we have discussed both the frameworks and certain important issues. Here we like to move to ethical reasoning methods. How do you, make proper decisions after recognizing so many different aspects in terms of ethical reasoning in urban design? So here is the suggested procedure. So step one, you might wish to identify stakeholders. So who will be affected by your new design, whether it's residents, developers, government, future generations, or non-human nature. For example, if there are a lot of monkeys in the area, then you have to take the urban monkeys into consideration. And step two, identify ethical conflicts. So, sometimes there's contradiction between efficiency and equity, growth and heritage, safety and freedom. Then you have to balance these different objectives to see if it's a better way to balance, different objectives or different interests in social groups. Step three, apply ethical frameworks. So you might wish to, consider all these different frameworks and see, if you might evaluate the issue differently. So, for example, if we consider the local ecology, existing ecology system to be something, quite essential to preserve for the long-term benefit of the community, then, maybe that should become a key dimension when you make your urban design decisions. Step four, evaluate power relations. So who has the decision-making power, who lacks representation? So we mentioned earlier, if there's, a lot of discussion on the internet, although you might take those into consideration, but you also need to keep in mind, certain social group might lack representations on social media, and you like to take some actual steps in order to integrate the voices of the disadvantaged social group into consideration. Step five, justify a position. So you might want to provide evidence, ethical reasoning, and acknowledgement of trade-offs in your design process and justify your position to the community. So I think these are all very practical things to consider in urban design in any city. So, for example, here is a case from Sydney. So we have this waterfront area, and then the local government decided to make as luxury redevelopment. So initially, there are a lot of debates and controversies about the development projects. It's a huge project. It's near Darling Harbour. So whether you should make that space as luxury residential projects or just public parks. So a lot of people might consider these as violation of local residents' interests because a lot of these luxurious apartment units were sold to global buyers because they are extremely expensive units. But on the other side, you have the positive outcome of this project in terms of economic growth, improved public space, rising property values, and you might, use this project as a, city branding strategy. So I personally have visited the project recently, and I consider it's a quite successful project because even though the apartment units were sold to very rich buyers, but common people can still enjoy the improved public environment near these projects. So we have a park on the end of the project, and on the other end, we have Darling Harbour. So when we walk through the project from Darling Harbour to the public park, we can have a range of amenities in terms of restaurants, in terms of nice shops, and they are quite affordable to common residents in Sydney, and become another lovely spaces, provide very good experience for local residents, as well as visitors from other countries. So I consider this is overall is a very positive outcome. And I like to open this particular case in Indonesia for discussion. So basically, as you know, you're building the new capital city, and certainly, this will, benefit certain group, and will, the relocation might also cause some environmental issues. So I don't know whether this eventually will have what sort of outcome. I'll stop my lecture here and open this to discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Prof. Duanfang Lu. Okay, there's a student. Maybe you can ask something, maybe, atau Prof. Jenny, maybe we can discuss something from the material from Professor.
Okay, maybe Prof. Lu already mentioned about the discussion about Indonesian Nusantara
Yes,
to capital
Nusantara in
city.
Jakarta.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the capital city in Kalimantan,
Thank you.
right? So maybe students can express their opinion, or yeah, I think that
Yes.
or maybe they would ask some things about the lectures.
Yeah, maybe I want to know, Professor, the ethical reasoning in urban design, is it different between another cities? I mean, is it influenced by local culture or not. For example, cities with beca Indonesia or city and rickshaw in China, human power three-wheel vehicles, of course, is different with infrastructure for vehicle. So the ethic is follow the nature by people, or the ethic is something remains the concept unchanging.
Yeah, of course, it might, the value might change, over time because for example, I mentioned, the CBD area of Guangzhou, because 20 years ago, Guangzhou was a very unsafe city. So that's why, in the new CBD area, they didn't provide any public seating in order to prevent the homeless people to stay in the area. But I think now Guangzhou has become a much safer city. So I guess, from my point of view, it's unnecessary not to provide, any public seating in the area. And I consider lack of public seating in the new CBD area is actually a very poor decision making because I think it will naturally affect visitors' view on the city. So I consider, of course, this ethical reasoning will necessarily change under different social conditions. Yeah.
So the people must be follow the how city is shaped by urban design, and then in my opinion, the ethics something make everyone the people say yes to urban design. I mean yes for everyone.
Yeah.
Is it right, Professor?
So
Okay.
any other different view?
Mm-hmm.
I like to see, what students think. So after one semester of study of urban design, and what you think, have this ethical reasoning make you reflect, some of the early principles you have learned about urban design? So, for example, you like to maintain walkability, density. So, how does ethical reasoning change, your reflections on some commonly held urban design principles?
Okay, maybe Prof. Jenny or some the student ask something, you can raise hand or type in the comment box for the material ethical reasoning in urban design. It is important thing in why we use ethical, and student have used crime prevention through environmental design CPT-AD for this design. Is it enough for our students trying to use CPT-AD, crime prevention through environmental design in some design of area or some public space? How come it's enough to get the reason with ethical in crime prevention, Professor?
Yes, I guess my point is to get students to think, because it's very easy to take some universal design principles to an Indonesia city and apply those universal principles. But I guess as said earlier, it's quite important to consider how different design principles work under specific social conditions, right? So I just feel like if you can share some stories with me in terms of certain changes in urban design that have been affected by ethical reasoning or local culture, that would be interesting for me to learn.
Yes, yes, yes. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe I think that's almost all ethical issues in urban design exist in Asian countries like Indonesia.
Yes,
Maybe
yes.
Professor Lu can share with us about the experience maybe in China cities, how they can deal with these issues. And then like you said about the Guangzhou, yeah, so after 20 years, for example, so they can solve that issue, for example. Maybe you can share about the Asian cities that they can deal with the issue.
Yes, before and after.
Because
Yes.
all of these ethical issues is existing in Indonesia. So it's very complicated.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's very complicated in any society, I guess. It's not just, for developing societies. So, of course, I think the advantage of developing societies is, everything change quickly. People are motivated to make advancement, to, have progress over time. So that's what happened in Chinese cities. Local officials were motivated to, learn from better practices in other societies. So I think, for example, a lot of urban designers, planners learn from Japan in terms of, how to maintain urban cleanliness, how to make sure the wayfinding is easier in staging areas, for example. So I guess the standards, the bar has been raised higher and higher, and cities learn from each other as well. So, for example, Chengdu is not a top tier city, but still it has been designed very smartly in terms of preserving cultural heritage and integrate the heritage buildings as part of the contemporary urban fabric. And also with the environment quality improve, it actually attract a lot of young people to come there to live. So basically that in turn provide better motivation for the city to design even better environment for these new and young residents. So they have upgraded a lot of urban public spaces for young people to show off their new clothes. So I feel like so if you take people's preference into account, then you will attract more people, and especially young people, to come to the city, and you will collect very good energy for the development of the city.
Yeah, thank you.
So Chengdu is actually known as the capital of gay people in China. So yeah, because a lot of facilities were provided, and the atmosphere is quite open and free. So basically that in turn also affect the aesthetic quality of certain public spaces in Chengdu. So that's another dimension in terms of ethical reasoning. How do how to be inclusive in terms of the needs of different social groups.
Okay, thank you.
So
Maybe,
yeah, I guess different societies might have different standards in terms of
yeah.
what is considered as ethical in urban decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Maybe student,
yeah,
student.
Professor, yeah, student can ask and type or raise hand. Maybe, okay, no one can, no one raise hand right now, but I want to ask to Professor, can ethical reasoning vary from one area to another by the time? Change by the time the ethical reason is changing. Is
Yes.
yes. Well, what factor can make the ethical reason is change?
So basically, I think the theoretical rationality might change over time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
basically, for example, China used to be a socialist country. Now it's a,
Mm-hmm.
capitalist society.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of rationalities have been changed in that process. So basically, and also like other society might not change that radically, but over time, as the level of wealth increased or decreased, then the standards for ethical considerations might be changed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like for example, whether you provide toilet paper in public restrooms, is a ethical consideration, but it has to be based on local social condition. I guess it's not, there's no universal answer to, certain principle. Yeah, especially for a developing society, even though you have ideals from developed society, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to take local condition into consideration, because otherwise it's just impossible to implement, or it might not be the preference of local government.
Yes. Okay. This is we asked from the student, Fredela Adristi Arisandi. Fredela, maybe you can you ask by yourself.
Yes, so okay. Biggest challenge is how to create
Fredela.
modern development sacrificing local community identity of the
Okay.
place. Yeah, that's quite true. And most redevelopment projects improve growth, also create social impacts. And yes, that's very true. Ethical reasoning
In
is very important.
redevelopment
Development,
projects that
yeah,
prioritize economic
yeah,
growth and modernization, how
yes,
can urban designers balance investor
yeah,
interests with right or local
yeah.
communities? So, which one,
Mhm.
in fact, investor interest or local communities in
Yeah,
order? Which one to prevent
yeah,
gentrification and the loss of local
yes.
identity? Maybe.
So yeah, it's just a very difficult balancing and negotiation um, process, I guess. Like, so because like as I said, it really depends on, for example, the level of resources available. Can you still, keep local identity or even develop local identity in a redevelopment project? I think Indonesia actually has some quite successful redevelopment projects. that have already, been doing very well in terms of balancing gentrification and local culture and identity. But I guess it's on project basis, because depending on how you handle the interests of different stakeholders, you might come up with quite good solution. For example, in that project I mentioned in Sydney, I think because urban designers have not just pay attention to those individual buildings, they have redesigned spaces between those buildings carefully. So even though as local residents you might not have access to those buildings, still you can enjoy a lot of the commercial establishments in public spaces. And public spaces, the waterfront public spaces have been so well designed, so it's just become a very enjoyable experience to visit the area. So in that way, the project actually benefit the community as a whole. But for example, if as a planner you decide that part should be gated community, then it wouldn't benefit the society. So that's the difference. Because it's very common for some societies when you build very expensive residential buildings, you like to keep the spaces near the residential buildings as exclusive spaces, just for the residents' use. But in that project, the planners decide, all the spaces surrounding those buildings will be public spaces that can be enjoyed by any, residents or visitors in the city. So that way you kind of balance the investors' interest with the rights of local community. So in my view, that project has done quite well in terms of the balancing game.
Yes, the balancing. The key
Yeah.
word is balancing. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, the next question for the student. Fredela, maybe you can ask something if you want to ask another. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the explanation. Okay, Professor, thank you for the explanation. And maybe the student from Principle of Urban Design from class A, B, C, D.
E.
E. Okay. Yes. The professor. Maybe I want to ask again. Again.
Yeah, it's okay. If you don't have questions, maybe you can just have some comments.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Just share some local stories with me so I can learn from you as well.
Yes, maybe student can share. Prof. Jenny mungkin dari mata kuliah visual,
So
mungkin ada sesuatu yang harus di-share.
interesting stories in terms of urban development from your city?
Mhm. We focus on settlement and heritage city and settlement, and every year we bring the student to heritage city in Indonesia, and they learn about the characteristic, identity, and something potential and a problem in that city to analyze with urban theoretical. So that issues is about how the cities to prevent the growth and the dynamic of the city. Some ethical is sometimes it depend on how the city, I mean the government, to give some like policy to urban,
Mhm.
how to revitalize or renewal the area, and
Yeah.
then how to make some tourist area or some
Mhm.
trade area. It's no every policy can be rules by the people. So
Mhm.
is it a different ethic some area with the other area?
Mhm.
It was it's not suitable for us maybe like
Mhm.
and in Asia or not in Asia countries. Is it different ethical reason? Is it true or not? Mhm. Like a different. We going to Singapore or like and then we going to a traditional city in Indonesia.
Yeah.
We can use the ethical in Singapore to in Yogyakarta like maybe or like in Jakarta or another city in Indonesia, but we have
Mhm.
to find the ethical reason in that city that we learn.
Mhm.
Maybe I wish in my opinion,
Yeah.
and student find the fact in the field study.
Mhm. Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what do you think about how we learn something in our city and how to build with ethical for Indonesian for Indonesian people? I mean,
Yeah.
is
So,
it different
so
or in Asia, average is the same thing or not? Or okay, in China we have to
mhm.
three vehicle
Mhm.
wheel, three wheel people power like
Mhm.
rickshaw. Or Indonesia we know beca or like this. Uh,
Mhm.
it's the same culture and is it true we can use this to design in our country, in cities in our country?
Mhm.
Mhm,
Yeah, I feel sometimes you can use good practice from other societies, but sometimes you
mhm,
have to, uh, see like, if there's some major differences between the two societies that would prevent the successful,
mhm,
um, like transplantation of the ideas from other societies. So,
mhm,
and also the outcome might be different. So, yeah, I guess like certain policies or designs might work well in other society, but when you try to transplant the ideas in local society, it might not be well taken by the local community. That's all very natural because different stage of development, different economic conditions might change, the way things progress. So I guess like then you just have to test. So that's why we have to do some local research. We can't depend on research outcomes from other societies to guide our urban design. We need to do more locally based
Mhm.
uh, urban design research in order to understand local preferences, local cultural values, local, frameworks for design and planning. So if you understand the local society better, it would be easier for your decision making, or in terms of introduction of ideas from other places. Yeah, it's good to do some research before you make the decision.
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. It's interesting. It's your opinion about our doing. So maybe Prof.
Yeah, I
Denny
think
can
Janice's
recap
research basically
research.
is very important. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because
Maybe Prof.
provide
Jenny
better.
can recap what we talk about today, this class.
Yeah. I mean, then maybe we can, I hope students can understand about what is it, the ethics, ethical reasoning in urban design. And then, so it's actually very, what is it? It's very complicated. Yeah. So because
Yes.
we have to think about many frameworks and then many ethics. Yeah. And then to apply in one place. So like Professor Lu said, we need to do some research on our local
Our local.
culture and then local issues, etc. So hopefully in the next meeting, Professor Lu will explain about the key methods in urban design. So hopefully students also can learn how to do a good research in urban design. So we can, we can think and then maybe support our government and then inform our government how to deal with the urban design that based on the research. Yeah, maybe, yes, because usually we only, based on the theory and then we neglect the local, the local things. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank
So
you, Prof.
Jenny,
Jenny.
could you
Yeah.
tell me, in this class, students have already learned urban design analysis methods, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
not yet. So it will very helpful for us. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Maybe Pak Suban, we
Okay.
can take
Thank
picture
you, Professor
together.
Duang Lu and Professor Lu.
Okay.
Yes, we can take a picture together. So the student, please, on the camera, so we can make some picture. Mbak Miko, hello. Please, student, on the camera, so we
Yeah.
can take the picture together.
Or we
Okay.
can take picture next time when you have more
Okay.
students.
Okay.
Okay.
We counted
Right.
1, 2, 3. This 1, 2, 3. Okay. And the next layer. Hello. One, two, three.
Five pages.
Finish?
The next
Okay.
bit. Oh, no, it's the last page.
Okay, the last one.
One to the last one. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Please
Okay.
on camera. Okay, thank you to everyone, and especially for Professor Duang Lu for the material, for the time, for sharing.
Yeah.
And we
I'll
can,
see you on Friday.
we'll see you on Friday
Okay.
in
Thank
7
you.
o'clock. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much, Duanfang. See you on
See you
Friday.
soon. Bye.
Thank you, Pak Suban.
Makasih, Bu Jenny.